Yeah, so again, I'm Matt DeYoung, Executive Director of the Santa Cruz Mountain Trail Stewardship. I still have trouble with our name, even though it's been a year since we changed it. So we were founded as Mountain Bikers of Santa Cruz and just made that change last year. Today, I want to talk a little bit about org history, our evolution, as Don mentioned. He really set that up well. We started off as a social club and have grown into a professional organization. And I also want to talk about the capacity building that's helped us get there. Not really like the fun trail building capacity building, but all the other like not so fun nonprofit maturity, kind of growing into a real professional organization. We started off as trail builders and had to learn all those ins and outs of running a professional organization. And I think that part of the presentation, I really want that to be a discussion. We're further along than maybe some of you guys, but not as far as others. So I think we've got a lot to learn and a lot to share. Just want to hear from you guys about challenges and wins in some of these different areas. So we'll get there in a minute. Yeah, so we were founded in 1997 as Mountain Bikers of Santa Cruz. The impetus for the founding of our organization was a property acquisition that was added to a state park here locally. The mountain bikers hadn't been well represented in our local community of conservation organizations or trail users. So there's a group of folks that wanted to be at the table there. So founded the organization, incorporated into a nonprofit, and raised a little bit of money for that acquisition, which was added to Wilder Ranch State Park around that time. So that was the kickoff. From there, there was a little bit of advocacy happening, a little bit of trail work. I just pulled up one of our early newsletters yesterday to kind of get a feel for what was happening then. And it was like the recap of the year. I think they did like 200 hours of trail work. Went to a couple meetings. They drank a lot of beer, went up for a lot of bike rides. So that was happening. But not a whole lot of impact happening for access and advocacy. In Santa Cruz County, right, we're world famous for mountain biking. Like everyone knows about us. We got a brand named after us, but we have very little legitimate mountain bike trail access here. We've got about 220 miles of official single track trails, and of those, less than 50 are open to mountain bikes. So there's been this, inequity there as mountain bikes become like this almost the most popular use on the trail. Still a lack of that legitimate access. So this organization was really founded to kind of work on that. We went on for about 10 years, kind of doing the social thing. And then there's a all volunteer organization at that point. And then there was a change of leadership on the board of directors that really had that focus on access, recognized the fact that, we weren't getting anywhere with new trails or legitimizing trails, and we're seeing access being threatened. So really changed the organization's focus to being about access and really doubled down on advocacy. And we had an opportunity to put in a multi-use trail in a city park here that connects kind of downtown with our state parks, the university, where there's a lot of other riding. And successfully got that through a very contentious city council planning process. People talk about Marin being a hard place to get stuff done because of the environmentalist movement. We have the same issues here in Santa Cruz, where very well established conservation community that tries to block anything new in the name of environmentalism. It was a years-long process and successfully got this trail approved. And the organization had volunteered, hey, we're gonna build this trail. That was not an existing proficiency for the org at that time. So it was kind of just we'll figure it out. Just fake it till you make it type of thing. Say whatever you have to say to get this project through, and that worked. So our first employee was hired at that time. So it was 2012 as a trail builder. I started with the organization at that time as a volunteer on this trail project, Emma McCrary Trail. Hugely successful project. It was right after it was opened, it was the most Strava trail route in the US. So it was, tons of traffic connecting to all of our major riding areas. So huge success there. And that really opened the doors up for a ton of new work for us. So we started hearing from other land managers in the county saying, hey, we need help. Santa Cruz County, we're the smallest county in California, which means that we have a very small tax base, which means our land managers are chronically underfunded here. So there's not a lot of funding for our county parks. State parks has gone through the ringer for the last couple of decades, ups and downs. We've got a state state forest run by our forestry organization that has zero funding for recreation. So there's this gap in trail maintenance and development. So, after this little nonprofit successfully implemented a new trail, a lot of people took notice of that and said, hey, we want to work with you guys as well. So we started hearing from CAL FIRE, our state fire and forestry organization that owns a demonstration forest here up on top of the hill, where they do a lot of logging and research and science up there. And they had a trail network, but they had converted one of the original trails back into a logging road, and they were logging up there. So that got the conversation going about, hey, let's replace that with a more mountain bike oriented trail. And that spurred this flow trail project. We're still an all volunteer organization with kind of on-call trail building staff. I was one of those guys. And got this project approved and funded. We raised $220,000 for this project, which at the time seemed like a huge amount of money. Now it's like a really cheap trail project for us. We really galvanized the industry to get support for funding that project. So really developed a lot of competencies through having to put this project together, like the fundraising, sponsorship stuff, and the volunteer management, which is where we really started investing in training our volunteers to help build the capacity around trail building. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then from there we went on to partner with state parks, which Chris Orr alluded a little bit to yesterday as being a challenging organization way behind state parks organizations in other states. So this was a relationship kind of 2 decades in the making, where we had been pushing to help them out with trail problems and maintenance and whatnot, and finally got some traction. And we did our first project with them where we rerouted a heinous legacy trail that was eroding into like 5 different lines and had sinkholes that were developing in it, so it was going to swallow someone alive. And rerouted that trail, the Enchanted Loop, in Wilder Ranch, and that's kind of set us up to have a really strong partnership there with our local state parks district, where we're now talking with them about doing the first mountain bike optimized trail in the entire state here in the Santa Cruz district. So it's been a really strong part of our advocacy work. And then from there, I just want to back up for a second too. So Flow Trail, this was still all volunteer run organization with trail building staff. After this project, our board of directors, they totally burned out. Like they had put, done a ton of work to put this trail project together. And we had 100% turnover after this project. They just walked away. They're like, hey.
You were there.
I wasn't on the board. I was a staff member, but I saw that. Hey, this is the wrong time to take the foot off the gas. We just, built this amazing trail. We have this whole organization. We have all these engaged volunteers and sponsors and supporters. So, I kind of raised my hand to help, let's do a board elections, get new people in the door. I took over a lot of stuff as a volunteer, like just the newsletter, the maintaining relationships. And we got a new board in the door, and they had been kind of given the mandate to, hey, we need to professionalize this organization to sustain this level of work. We see the risks of the lack of continuity between an all volunteer organization, right? Where you got people who are all in, super excited, and then burn themselves out or have a kid or move away, and you just lose that momentum. So they kind of gave this mandate to the new board, hey, you guys got to professionalize your organization. And then new board came in with no history with the organization. These people had not been really engaged with the org at all, so just kind of walked in off the street. We took all comers. That's worked out well, but it took a little while to get people up to speed. So we had to bring people along, get them there, and then at some point, they realized that, hey, we need staff. So I wrote a job description for myself, and kind of at that point became the first full-time staff member. I don't know what I was thinking, but here I am about 6 years later, and it's worked out well. So this was kind of the inflection point for us for really becoming that more professional organization and really changing the focus away, moving away more and more from that social stuff to the trail building focus, which we realized is where we were making the most impact. We could get people together for group rides or a bike race, but really that was maybe 500 people at a time, whereas building a new trail, we're serving 7 million people in the greater Bay Area, so making much bigger impact by focusing on that. Then working with state parks, At this time, we're just 1.5 staff members with lots of volunteers helping out. And then Glenwood Preserve, this is a little preserve in Scotts Valley, which is just up the hill here. It's privately held by a land trust. And this is our first project we were ever hired to build. So, we still fund most of our own projects, but we get hired from time to time, which is way better. Turns out when someone pays you to build trail, makes everything way easier because you just show up and build the trail. So this is kind of another kind of inflection point for us where we started doing this fee for service work and getting hired. So this is the same organization that is running the same Vicente project, which we'll get to see tomorrow, hear a little bit more about. So great relationship there. Done some more work in state parks that we've funded. This was funded through the bike race that we used to hold there in Wilder Ranch. And then, I wanted to point out this project. This is a Pogonip Creek Nature Loop, which is just about a mile from here, one of our city parks. And it's a hiking only trail. So we're still mountain bikers of Santa Cruz at this point, but we've kind of become the experts in sustainable trail building in the region. So we're getting approached by equestrians and city park managers saying, hey, we need help with these hiking trails. And for us, we're like, hey, that makes sense for us. You had to bring some people along there, but it was a great outreach and partnership tool to reach new organizations, new constituents, and build a lot of trust and relationships with land managers, hikers, environmentalists. So that really paid off for us to take that jump away from just being a core mountain bike focused organization. Excuse me.
Pogonip is also one where it's like hikers and mountain bikers like really butt heads on that trail, right, Matt? Like one of the trails that has the most conflict.
Yeah, there's a lot of sense of ownership. There was the environmental community really went to bat to preserve this park, Pogonip. So that feeling of ownership there, and maybe having a different idea about what recreation is. That old school kind of conservation environmentalist crowd, like bird watching, hiking, quiet enjoyment of nature, as opposed to we're in Santa Cruz, which is a very active community. So that tension between more active mountain biking use and those more traditional uses is definitely manifested quite a bit here. And we've made a lot of progress there with the Emma McCurry Trail and helping out with these other hiking trails too. Yes, it's jumped to 2018, Saratoga Skyline Trail. We got our contractor's license because we were finding that we were not able to do everything we wanted to do without it. So California, as opposed to other states, is pretty restrictive in kind of labor laws and whatnot. And for any public project, it's got to go out to a competitive bid process to a licensed contractor. So we found ourselves missing out on opportunities to make money and build trails. So we got our contractor's license, and this was our first public works project, the Saratoga Skyline Trail, just over in Santa Clara County, and right over the hill here. And this ended up being a $1.5 million project that we were the awarded the bid for. So that was a big move for us. We took on it was a bigger project we've never done before. It had, massive engineered bridges, like 90-foot bridges that we had to figure out how to build. So really kind of stepped up our game, brought in some more experienced construction staff around this. So another kind of big jump for the organization. Now, at this point, we've got about 12 people on staff helping run the organization. Some more work at the demonstration forest. Pump tracks. We built 6 or 7 pump tracks, mostly dirt tracks. This is our first asphalt project in Watsonville, which is just in the southern part of Santa Cruz County. It's a agricultural area. There's a lot of migrant workers there, and it's an underserved community. Like Santa Cruz has great access to the outdoors, except for the southern part of our county, which is mostly privately held. So this is an opportunity for us to make a big impact on access and recreation there. And this kind of ties in with that maturing of the organization. We built all these pump tracks around the county, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this, but working with every land manager is different, right? And those things evolve, right? Those relationships. We built pump tracks here in Santa Cruz for the city with 0 permitting, I think one of the construction drawings was literally drawn on a napkin and then placed on an engineer's drawing. So, getting pretty creative on how to get stuff done, which is what you got to do, right? You want to get things done as best you can. But, that, whatever it was, like the times changed and we were finding that wasn't really working anymore. We were having to doing everything by the book, dotting all our I's, crossing our T's. So this project, it was self-funded. We did all the development work on it, the permitting, the engineering, and it was a learning process for us. We went through every single one of those steps, had to check every box. So we had to develop those proficiencies, bringing in landscape architects, this and that, and really navigating through a city bureaucracy where you've got public works, planning, and parks and rec all, having their say on how a project gets done. So this was, a far bigger lift, more expensive than any other pump track project we've done. But now we're set up to do whether it's a more informal project or the full gamut.
What was the cost on that one?
This one ended up costing $350,000. We estimated at $250,000, and then the scope just kept growing because the city planning kept coming back with more and more. So luckily this was all funded by a donor, one of the ones that Joe referenced last night, and she was kind enough to help us kind of recoup some of those cost overruns. And from there, we did the West Side Pump Track project I wanted to mention because that was supported by PayDirt. So thank you, Santa Cruz Bikes, for helping us fund that rebuild. Was an existing track that was dirt and kind of had been hammered over the years. So we raised the funds to rebuild that as an asphalt track. It was right across the street from the showroom where we were last night. So definitely let's check that out if we're back over there in the daylight.
Yeah, dude, Gazelle's on the pump track. Who's up for it?
Gazelle's are perfect.
Do we get a
Merit badge.
Oh,
If you live, you get a merit
Try
badge.
to get one made by tomorrow.
all that badges?
So, Chitoni Coast Areas National Monument is probably the coolest project we've ever done. We're going to go out there later today. We're really excited to share that with you. So this is a new national monument surrounding Davenport, about 10 miles up the coast here. It's been in the works for over 20 years. The property was protected 20 years ago. We'll go into more detail about that. So, super long development process. And somehow we've ended up driving the public access there. So we developed an agreement with the Bureau of Land Management where we're funding, designing, building, and maintaining these trails out there. Despite the fact that it was declared a national monument, they weren't given any money to actually open it to the public. So, which is a whole nother broken system we could talk about all day. But so we've really stepped in to help them do that, which is a huge lift for us. So we'll get up there today and learn more about that project. And then San Vicente Redwoods, we'll go out there tomorrow. Another big trail project that actually connects to coast dairies. We've been involved up there for almost 10 years now with that planning. Greg came down to help us get the planning kicked off there. And despite another long runway there, we broke ground this year and it's going to open up next month. So I'm going to check that out tomorrow as well. So organization changed a lot through this time. We were all volunteer from 1997 to 2012, and then we were volunteer with that project-based staff for 2012 to 2016. And 2016 is really where we've kind of taken off to where we are today, where we've got a staff of 20, professional trail crew, trail planning staff, we have volunteer coordination staff, a marketing team, development staff, and of course administration, HR, all that fun stuff that you got to have at some point. So I want to talk about kind of the capacity building that we've gone through to get us to this point. And it's, this isn't a one size fits all type thing. It's specific to your geography, the scope of the work your organization's undertaking. But I wanted to share some of the things that we've tried and what's worked well and what hasn't. And I want to hear from you guys too about these things, about what you guys are doing here. And I wanted to start off with public engagement and advocacy, talk a little bit about volunteer programming and about funding. Is really at the end of the day, like the money makes the magic happen. So talk a little bit about the different ways in which we're bringing in funding for our organization, and also touch on our rebrand and just share some lessons that we've learned through that process. Yeah, so public engagement. So we've moved away from the word advocacy. We've learned from our land manager partner. It's kind of a dirty word in the land management community, where it's like when they hear about an advocacy organization, they roll their eyes and groan. So we've kind of rebranded that work as public engagement, where we're getting the public involved in the public process and in our government work. That's been received well. And we've learned a lot of lessons along the way here, made some big stumbles. I guess I want to use a couple examples here of some things that have worked well and some that haven't. So this picture here is like 2017. We had a city parks master planning process where they were looking at the whole park network, figuring out what they wanted to do with our local parks and trails and whatnot. And we came out of the gate like guns blazing on this one, saying, hey, we want mountain bike specific trails in our city parks. And we got tons of support there. We were doing advertising campaigns, postering, we were doing phone calls to our constituents. We're getting all of our partners to post about it. So really mobilize the community to come out and speak up for mountain bike trail access. And we had support from the city staff. They're like, yeah, we want to do this, right? And we're networking with city council members and whatnot. So we're showing up here. Like, this is a public meeting that we had on this project, and they had to. This is City Hall, and they had to open up the civic auditorium as overflow. We had so many people out there speaking up for mountain biking. So if you go by numbers and whatnot, we totally won, right? We had so many people there speaking up for mountain biking. But we still had that environmental community that was in strong opposition. So it really became just at loggerheads, right? It was just a showdown between us and the environmental community, and it dragged out. This was supposed to take a year, ended up taking 4 years to get done because there was threatened litigation, this and that. So while we showed up as best we could, like with the numbers and the force, the missed opportunity there was building a coalition and getting support from other stakeholders. We weren't out there sitting down with other user groups saying, hey, like, what are you guys trying to get out of this? And kind of developing a shared advocacy position. We were just like hammering through the mountain biking stuff. So, at the end of the day, we weren't that successful. They didn't include any specific mountain bike trails. They had some wording about, hey, we want to do more trail planning in the future, which hasn't happened yet. So it was a failure at the end of the day there. So what we learned from that is really having to partner and build broader coalitions. So if you fast forward to 2020, we've got this Coast Dairies planning process going on, the big national monument I mentioned, where they're kicking off their public planning efforts. And we started off with a little bit different tact on that one, where first we're sitting down with the land manager, I'm trying to understand what is actually possible to do here. What can this property support given the National Monument Declaration, your policies? So starting off right there, getting that input. So we're not coming out of left field asking for the moon when that's not possible. So kind of getting those understanding of that. And then starting to talk with other stakeholders. So we spent a lot of time meeting with the neighbors up there, which are another local group in Davenport, understanding what their concerns were about access and traffic and trash and all those things. And then educating them about what we're asking for and why that's important, why we need multi-use trails and mountain bike specific trails, all these different things. So, kind of came to a common ground there where we're agreeing to advocate for each other's needs. Right, and then the same with the equestrian community, where we're advocating for horse trailer parking and access and water for horses, and they're advocating for mountain bike specific trails. So building this broad coalition that was all advocating for the same thing was really powerful. And the land managers, they appreciate that so much, right? Because they're not then put in the middle, right, of these different competing interest groups, having to feel like they've got to, be the mediators and spend all that energy trying to find the middle ground when they've got a common coalition coming to them asking for the same thing. So we were really successful through this project, advocating. We didn't get everything we wanted, which you never do, but we kind of owned the conversation with this coalition of people advocating for this project, and really did see a great project come out of that. So I'm kind of curious to hear from you folks about some experiences you may have had with similar situations, things that worked well or things that haven't. So has anyone got any thoughts on that? Yeah.
We had a big, quite a really popular, like most of our trails we have bridle ways, so it's multi-use trail, which is able to walkers, horse riders, and mountain bikers. And we just sort of on the start that a lot of work you did, but it was almost beyond just one user group. So we decided at the start, like, that if we led on the conversation, at the very worst, we'd actually start that conversation. So instigate the conversation. It was like this trail across quite a few different landowners' properties. So if we start that conversation and actually then took it to the other user groups, it was actually, we figured at the worst case scenario was that actually we were starting to see that mountain bikers were leading on these projects. Unfortunately, we got the funding for it, so actually the work was done and it was picked up and it was actually a really big project. But it was just really interesting that actually sort of attitudinally the mountain bikers taking the lead on all these projects, which was really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll chime in. I think you hit on this a little bit with working with so many different administrations. They all have their different processes and protocols. So what we found success in is even before a project or a trail idea is developed, what is your MOU with the city, right? What is your memorandum of understanding? What is your process? Kind of where is your lane going to be, and what are the steps within that lane to potentially even do a project? Because I think that's where, at least with Rambo, we've been around since 1986. But until we got that ironed out, we were always starting immediately with an uphill battle because they were always moving the target on us. So not only did we not know the rules, but they didn't know the rules on how to deal with us, which some of them classify us as a booster club, which is really disheartening. But they're trying to, like, if you have a softball complex and those softball teams are trying to raise funds to improve the park, they were looking at us as the same way. So they had to establish what their processes were for these kind of booster strategies. So once we got that, we were able to actually get city council to vote on that agreement. We then had a roadmap on how to work with them, what documentations would be expected, what our kind of the scope was allowed to be, and then we could start talking about the project. So like you're talking about early on, try to get what are the rules of the game, get it in writing, get it voted on, and then you can play ball. And then they feel comfortable to engage with you because they know that we're not going to go far left on them or far right on them, that we've got a lane that we're going to stay in. And it really accelerated the process for us to be able to put shovels in the ground officially.
Yeah, it's so important to have those relationships defined, right? Because I think these land managers are so used to being just lit up through these processes and people coming in and creating problems for them. So to be seen as a partner, an ally, getting to that point is just so important. I think the steps that you mentioned, like defining it through an MOU, sitting down and just talking through the possibilities is so valuable to get that. Then you've got, you can go talk to these people, right? And they're not going to put up walls and put you off if they understand that you're providing value for them.
And if they don't just wait 3 years until their campaign is up and then vote them out.
There it is, yeah.
Which is what happened for us.
Okay, yeah.
We had an MOU and they wouldn't sign it.
Yep.
But they wrote it.
It's all personalities, right? Yeah. Chris, you had a thought?
You both hit on the component of relationship building. And sometimes even before the MOU, you have to establish that trust in some way with your land manager, agency staff, or your partner organizations, those being environmental or conservation organizations. And one way to do that is not even do trail work with them. Like, you as an organization go help do a park cleanup, go help do plant trees, go do a conservation project and establish a relationship and some trust, and then start bringing in the trail aspect and possibly even collaborative projects and build that. So then the agency that writes the MOU also signs the MOU because they trust you through this relationship that you've built with them.
Yeah, absolutely. You understand what their needs are first, right? Hey, how can we help you guys before we ask for something? Yeah.
Was there strong pushback when you transitioned from a kind of volunteer to a air quotes for profit from there on? Were they more willing to work with you as an entity than a volunteer based organization, or vice versa?
I think yes, just because there was more continuity and like there was someone that they could call up, right? They knew it was going to be there, responsible, and accountable. So I think that was a definitely an evolution in their eyes. I think we had trouble in the past with a rotating cast of points of contact, right? Of reaching out to sponsors or land managers, and they're like, okay, well, who are all these different people, right? Who are coming through and changing. So having a little more organization and professionalism around that did go a long way. And then just having the bandwidth to do that relationship building, right? Like where it was my job to spend time building those relationships as opposed to a volunteer's flight of fancy or whatever, like having a focus on that for some time and not being maybe invested in it for years, right? So I think that was beneficial. Yeah.
We certainly believe there's strength in numbers, and so we took a two-pronged approach when we did this. First, we looked at mountain biker groups, which was easy. There's actually 4 mountain biker groups and 1 gravel group that all operate within the Stanislaus Forest. We're in one of the districts, and they're in the other 3 districts. Getting those groups together was pretty easy, and now all of those groups are kind of working to help each other solve problems. But the other part was harder, and I think it's a journey that we're still on, and that is to pull together the different user groups of the forest. And so the equestrians, when we started with them, they didn't trust us, they didn't like us. There's a number of other groups that were happy to talk with us, but if I wanted them to actually take some actions or do something, it was really difficult to get there. So we're still on this journey, but I think one of the things that I counted as a success for us is the equestrians came to us about a year right before the pandemic, and they have some sort of a competition, which I know nothing about what they do in their world, but they had this competition where the horseback riders were going along a trail and they get graded or looked at for all these different challenges that they had. And they had a challenge of a mountain biker, and they needed mountain bikers stationed along the trail to pose a challenge for the horseback riders. And then they had other people there, scoring them as they went past us. And so just the fact that they reached out to us to help them with their competition, I thought, hey, we've made this big leap forward with them. I'm not at a point yet where they'd be with me in front of the Forest Service asking for stuff, but just the fact that now they're reaching out, the other user groups are starting to reach out to me. So if there's anything that's going on in the forest that has a touch point with mountain biker, now they'll reach out and say, Dave, you need to know this, or hey, this happened. So the communication channels are now open amongst the user groups, but we're still not at a point where I'm able to really capitalize on that. So it's a journey, but we're starting that journey.
How many mountain bikers died?
How many mountain bikers died? We almost had one die this year.
No, I meant in the equestrian event.
Oh, in the equestrian event.
It was them shooting at us.
Were they target practice or were they trail off?
I don't even know how you grade that as for their competition. It's but as it turned out that a lot of the equestrians were youth that were in that competition, and the older folks were helping them in going through these challenges, and they used one of our they used the snake dance, which Don, as the trail that they did this on. And then I had 200 mountain bikers asking me, why the heck did we point them to one of our trails? What's that trail gonna look like when they're done that day? And the trail was fine at the end of the day. So it was actually a learning experience for us.
I think we all say the same thing. Like 20 years ago, we have to be savvy and booster club and core groups, and now we just have to
open up to strollers and joggers and like reduce mobility people, and having that conversation and just open up so much more head thinking around access to the forest. So we just have to do this now, like just believe we're not alone in those parts. And
Yeah, we can be leaders, right?
So that's the main priority now about land management and talking. Just engage those families and reduce access and older people as well. And like there's so much money and people out there that, oh yeah, we can go to these places and these places, talking about those groups we were not talking before. So that's it.
Is the forestry service, they're not elected officials, correct, or are they?
The Forest Service?
Forest Service,
No. They're a smaller set of employees who live in the area who will always be in that district, and then there's a larger set of people that are on a career path. And they will be working in my forest for 3 or 4 years and then get promoted and move to somebody else's forest. So there's this combination of how I work together with the people that are always going to be there and work together with the career path people. The career path people of the forest are hesitant making decisions to do things like trails because they're worried about how it's going to affect their next step up the ladder. So it turns out that the people that are the locals are in the Forest Service, almost all of them are mountain bikers. And unfortunately, I have not found any of them on the career path ladder as mountain bikers yet. That's the challenge I have there, is just getting these two groups within the Forest Service to work together better.
We have challenges. We work with the Forest Service quite a bit, but we also have a really great relationship with the Washington Department of Natural Resources. But even the challenge within that is that within one service area or district, we've got a great relationship. They've got a trail team. They work with our trail team. We can go out and pretty much do whatever we want. They'll fly helicopters to put in bridges for certain projects. On the opposite side of things, in another district in the same state, in the same organization, because there's a personality in that office that doesn't get it, doesn't want to be a part of it, it's a completely opposite thing, and it's not built out for every project. And we've been doing it with the DNR for 15 years already. We've got experience, we've got credibility, but still it's that one personality that put into that almost anything. It's always there's that one person that can stop something or make it hard, even in an organization that isn't hard for
We've run into that too. That's where bringing the different mountain bike groups within the Stanislaus Forest helped, because each of the districts had their own set of Forest Service staff that were looking at things differently. Now, I chair a meeting with all of those groups about roughly quarterly, and we have them everybody brings their Forest Service people to that. And now the Forest Service people are asking, my Forest Service people are asking the people in the other districts, what are you guys doing we ran into this challenge with Dave, how did you guys solve this before? Because we're all in different states. So it's, states of our progress. So it's been helpful to bring the Forest Service together to also then look at how they're running into these challenges, those personalities.
Yeah. Do you find like the relationship building can really, really reduce the friction? So we have that, we've always seen ourselves as almost that hub point. So the information comes into us that we can share with mountain bikers, so on the land managers and the music group. So like I said, horse riders, we get that, so if there's an equestrian event, they now contact us just to inform us that they're going to be on the trail, so we can reduce that impact. So there's quite a lot of opportunities, or that there might be certainly during the like ground burn nesting season where we were asking them to go in certain areas, but previously to us existing, it was just like, oh, mountain bikes are there, like why are they riding this trail? Everybody knows that you shouldn't be there, but we didn't. And actually, just that simple bit of communication of actually telling us and sharing them had such a massive impact.
Yeah, humanizing it, right? We can always be like us and them. Like, I think they were all people, and like you have a conversation with someone, like you're not gonna maybe characterize them as, you know, a rogue mountain biker. Like, okay, I can have someone I can talk through frustrations. Like, there's so much value there. Yeah, so like any of those opportunities, whether it's like a horse event or like people know about nesting birds, is all just like, you know, great opportunities to make those connections and partnerships stronger.
And also, like, we have, so horse riders, and I don't have sort of numbers compared, but horse riders are pretty much the smallest user group, but they saw us as like a massive ally, because actually they saw us sort of having parity with them. So quite often, rather than say a couple of hundred mountain bikers in the city, a couple of hundred horse riders in the city, there were thousands and thousands of mountain bikers, and actually if they needed numbers, they could actually rely on us to support their projects as well. So again, we could work collectively with it.
Absolutely. Well, good stuff. Oh,
Just wanted to add to that, yeah, just involving other trail user groups is definitely key, I think. That's something we've had to work on, and it was interesting how you said like that hard line from mountain bikers is like, we want mountain bike trails. This doesn't work when you just try and force that. And so we've, like all of our trails in Whistler are multi-use, but they have been designed by mountain bikers. But we've also seen it in terms of the funding, having more sponsors outside of our usual realm. So like trail running especially is growing popularity, and we've had some sponsors like Lululemon who've given us loads of money because they see the trails being used by trail runners and that sort of thing. So yeah, it can work from the advocacy side, but also the funding by opening it up to more groups.
yeah, absolutely. Great.
Can I just ask a quick question? Is there anywhere where there are centralized resources for you guys? Would it sit with you, for example? Because this all feels like a lot of the conversations around stakeholder management. There's a lot of tools and techniques out there within the corporate world to help with that stuff that would fit and is quite generic and can be used in all these kind of circumstances. Where would that sit? Like, where would that toolbox sit? Does anything exist?
I'm not sure about specific to mountain bike advocacy. I mean, IMBA does do a lot of that stuff. There's toolboxes and you know, education around that. So it is available. I don't know how widespread it's used. Chris might have a better idea about some of that stuff. We look to other nonprofits quite a bit outside of our sector to learn how that kind of works down, and really to a lot of our conservation partners here who've had to go through these public processes, especially like our private organizations like land trusts, who have a little bit more resources than our public agencies do. Like they've done some really good work here locally that we've drafted on and learned quite a bit from. Yeah.
There's a few things that I've used in the past, very different world, but that were really useful, like the stakeholder matrix, so that you understand like who's involved, what their interests are, like where you need to move them from to, how you're going to do that, who's responsible. Like, I just wonder if there are like some fairly simple tools that can be made available to everyone to help. Because like, it sounds like it's been huge for all of you guys that have been through that to move from we're a mountain bike organisation, we want trails, to we're part of this collaboration that's trying to improve forest area for everybody. So like, yeah, simple tools that everyone would use would be a good resource.
I think you could break that apart into a lot of different silos. There's probably some, I think the U.S. Forest Use Service has trail drawings that we use at least for some of our permitting documents. So we didn't have to draw those. It's great that they were coming from a government entity, so the agencies were comfortable with that, so they would do that. But then the whole education, teaching ourselves those processes. I don't know what technology platforms would be. That would be quite an undertaking. I think anybody was trying, but it's a very complicated, trying to teach everybody, because like we're saying, it's so different to each local administration. But
stakeholder management,
right.
Communication side is
mapping those things. But I think
the tools are kind of translate across everyone's problems.
It's like sharing best practices.
IMBA actually in Europe have something called the Dog Culture actually in Europe for that.
I've heard the name, but
which is I'll send you the link, which is really good. And that is a hub for resources, and it's about bringing trail builders across Europe together to have that consistent approach and understanding, how to do manage trail infrastructure and incorporate things around trail building, but also about trail advocacy and these partnerships and so on we want to create. So that was something definitely useful to look at, and I don't think whether something on this side of the world has that kind of resource. But I just wanted to ask the question as well was, I was listening to you talking about the MOU, and so we have an MOU in the Tweed Valley, and I think and the way that works with the land manager, we only have one land manager, is that we have to adopt trails and we work on trails that are illegal trails. So we adopt those trails and we're entitled to work on them, and we always get that certified from the landowner. But one of our biggest problems we find our relationship with the land manager is getting worse rather than getting better. I hope that's not on camera, but
I was just recording.
Obviously, we think about stakeholder management. It's getting worse because what's happening is they're always putting so much emphasis on the Trail Association that those that are still building illegally, it becomes a bigger issue for the forestry. Because they think that through our association that we can manage the trail infrastructure and the network, but actually you can't, because you can't stop people building trails. And you're always going to have those illegal trails, so that's always going to be a conflict. And one of the things I remember from talking to the forestry is that the mountain bikers are our smallest user group, but they're our biggest nightmare. And the only reason they're saying that is because mountain bikers are stereotyped in a particular way, and therefore that attitude is reinforced through the administration, which doesn't help in itself.
Yeah, we've faced similar challenges here with that, and really like that expectation that as a nonprofit advocacy group that we are the be all end all for the whole community, right? That expectation can be out there. What we come back with when we hear those things is like, hey, this is a design problem, right? Like we're not meeting a need that's out there. So like, these are the consequences of that need not being met. This legal trail building, the user conflicts. So I think just pivoting that way, like, hey, in pointing to all the great work that's being done by other organizations, whether it's Greg or Evergreen or anyone else here who's like built infrastructure that alleviates the problem. Because we talk about passive versus active enforcement. With active enforcement being that education, that enforcement of whether it's ticketing people or whatnot, and those things just aren't that effective, right? Whereas if we build the infrastructure that really guides people's behavior, like in this instance, providing mountain bike specific trails, that doesn't take all that overhead to enforce. People are going to naturally gravitate towards using those trails, right? Like it lessens the need for people to go build their own trails. So I think having those discussions is maybe in your favor, right? Explaining of how we can pivot to do these things. I want to jump ahead. This is a great discussion, but I want to keep moving through this. So touch on a couple other things. I did want to talk about our volunteer programming. So we made this jump from this all volunteer org to a professional org. We've got an amazing trail crew right now. We've got 9 guys out there working every day, but we still do a lot of volunteer work. We really couldn't do what we do without them, and that's on a couple different fronts. One, like the sheer manpower, where like this year we're gonna have 1,000 people come out, do over 10,000 hours, doing 172 events. We've got events like 2 to 3 times a week going on. But like, this is really important, getting work done, but also our land managers are so grateful for this because they're not good at doing volunteer programming. It's such a big lift to do it well. And our local land managers are so under-resourced. They have volunteer programming, but it's like they're not seeing people come back or have a great time. And we've kind of figured out ways to keep people engaged, making the social thing where people feel like they're doing something meaningful, getting lunch, raffle, beer, volunteer rewards. So really creating this whole community around it, and it serves as a communication channel between land managers and the public, right? So we can kind of break down that us versus them mentality a little bit, where it's like not like, oh, it's the Forest Service doesn't know what they're doing, this and that, but kind of having a two-way conversation so we can educate mountain bikers and other trail users why things are the way they are, why policies are made and whatnot. So, why we shouldn't ride in XYZ spots. So that's really been a huge tool for us in building that relationship with our partners and the public, serving as that kind of middle ground. Also, it's been a great way for us to generate new leads for fundraising. We've seen a lot of people come through our volunteer programming, and we're screening them and finding people that are able to make very large contributions to the organization who we didn't have existing touch points with previously. So that's been another great facet of that. And a couple of things about our programming. Dig days are our big events. We have about 2 of these a month. They got up to 100 people. And like we've found since the pandemic, we've been selling out the free events, but they fill up in about half an hour once they're announced in our newsletter. So it's been amazing to see that level of interest. We're at the point where our ability to host volunteer events is just limited by our staff capacity to get out there. We had so much interest, and we really saw that spiking around the pandemic. And our name change, which has brought in new constituencies. So that's been super exciting. And we've really invested in this side of our organization. So we have a training program for our volunteers called Trail Academy, where we're teaching people, here's the list of classes we offer, but teaching people about trail design, construction, very specialized skills, but also about leadership, right? Because the hardest part of any job is the people, we all know. So for our volunteers, it's the same way. So now we've got about, anyone can take these classes, they're free, can learn, but there's a track within here where you can become a volunteer crew leader. So like on these volunteer days, you're leading a smaller group within that larger group. So we're able to do really, pretty technical work with our volunteers and really meaningful, efficient work too. So that's been another kind of strong suit of our program. One second. And then, this has also evolved into what we call our trail stage program, where we've got these super crew leaders who are leading work independently. We're setting up volunteer events for them, and they're managing it totally independently of staff. So that's been another great kind of capacity building thing for us. We're taking on more like routine maintenance stuff that our crew doesn't necessarily need to be doing. They're just focusing on more technical projects. And we've got these volunteers that are able to do the brushing and the drainage work and whatnot. So it's been pretty fantastic. Yeah, question?
First of all, this is awesome. I've scoped this out from the East Coast that I've got on your website because it's one of the only ones that's this thorough that I've seen. My question was about the one-on-one class. Is that all in person?
No, so we took it online over the pandemic and did it. Yeah, so we have done it that way. We don't have anything scheduled right now. We do have recordings that we can share as well and some other materials. So we'd be happy to do that. Yeah, or if you're interested in setting something up too, we have done this for other groups.
Yeah, I'm real interested in how you're writing that. We were talking about this last night, like just reducing the barrier for that basic 101 thing is something that I've been trying to figure out a way to do. Not just to give a baseline for people that want to lead crews or want to do other work. Some of them want to go do a big rock armor class or something. Takes a high skill and a highly motivated person, but even that person needs to have basic knowledge of trails first and build your way up.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to kind of talk about that later maybe and see how some of that works. Because I think an online class that doesn't get into the seriousness of trails, but it gives everybody a basic overview of why you do what you do could be a prerequisite for everything moving forward. And there's not a lot of that happening across the country. There's colleges offering classes now. There's crew leader trainings that you go and do a 2-3 day class or something, but everybody doesn't want to do that. Some people just want to learn some basics.
Yeah, I mean, trails are like a black box for so many people, right? Like, they have no concept for any of, the why trails are the way they are. So I think building that, for volunteer education, but also for, educating the community that, hey, this is a need we have to build better trails, to maintain our trails and whatnot, to all that goes into it. So just building that understanding is so valuable.
Did you all get a grant to get this established, or was that just something you did with your?
We've just done it. We have gotten grants. I'm sorry. Yeah, REI has helped us every year fund a lot of this programming. Yeah.
I feel like Katie could make like 101, like 102, 103 wins. So you could all get out.
Yeah.
All right, I'm taking notes on the merit badges, everybody.
Who's taking this more advanced stuff like class 400 trail construction machines and trail machine finish the trail. Like, is this a common thing that people are interested in learning?
Yeah, so we haven't done too much training of volunteers on machines yet. It's a plan, but the finishing, yeah. So a lot of our work is machine work. So at Coast Areas, we'll go out there this afternoon and we'll see a trail that, our crew cut it with a machine, and then we'd have 2,500 feet of trail, rough cut in, and then our volunteers would come in to do the finish work, right? So understanding how to do that as opposed to hand building trail is kind of what that training is about. Yeah.
Hey Matt, sort of two questions. Looking at this is awesome, but I'm curious, like, sort of what the, is it a 101, a 1 hour video kind of thing, where 220 is obviously Wilderness First Aid, so that's a 3-day weekend kind of scenario.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they all have a different sort of level of that. The main question is, like, do you have one person that is responsible for this, and how did you develop that position? Because we've got a ton of builders that have all this skill and could definitely impart that on others, but most of our builders would rather be building,
Yeah, for sure.
right, than actually like even leading volunteers sometimes. So
Yeah.
What's the makeup of how this gets managed, and how often is this running? Is this a constant thing? Are you doing one-on-ones every month, or how does it work?
It's a great question. So we don't offer like the full curriculum on a rotating basis. We'll have like the kind of like a core group of class, the kind of the track for becoming a crew leader. We offer that. We try to do it twice a year. It's been once a year last year and this year because of just other demands and just figuring out how to streamline and get more people into it. So it's evolved a bit, where over the pandemic it was really easy to get people to come take online classes. So a lot of these things have a in the field and a classroom component to them. So how have we done it? So we do have staff that's not dedicated to this primarily, but our programming staff that runs all our volunteer programming runs this program too. So they'll be kind of overseeing the promotion, the scheduling, and doing some of the instruction, and then pulling in our trails program director, trails planning director, or other staff, depending on what it is, to run it. So we're not getting full participation from our trail crew. We are pulling in specific people for specific things. We'd love to have someone dedicated to just this. It's something that we've got, we're trying to raise funds for, but haven't quite succeeded yet. So it's definitely, it takes a participation from different parts of the organization, for sure.
We've got like 3 to 5 minutes
Okay.
before we kind of switch gears.
Okay, great.
Are you running AmeriCorps Cruz?
We're not. That's something we've explored a little bit.
Lucky Matt.
Oh no, that's all right. I don't think I should need it, but we've explored that, and it's a great tool. AmeriCorps programming. If you can, basically the way it works is if you put up about half the funding, the AmeriCorps program will put up the other half, and you can hire people through that. We haven't done that. We've done some other youth programming with the city here, and we've worked with other conservation crews.
So all those programming is for volunteers, the training program?
It is. We've done it for land managers as well. So we did this as a fee-for-service product too. So people have hired us to do this in other locations and for their staff or for their organization. So we can tailor make a curriculum for any need.
I know we only have a couple minutes, but are you going to talk more? I guess we'll talk later, but Cole's for-profit, nonprofit side of things.
Well, I'll finish there. That's a good place. I was going to talk through some of this stuff. I'm glad we're going to have some more. I guess Kathy this afternoon was talking about philanthropy, so that's good. We'll appreciate that. But our fee-for-service contract work. So this is a list of our different funding sources in the order of revenue, so top to bottom. So our fee-for-service work is actually where we make the most money. So we got a contractor's license. We're getting hired to do projects, right? We fund most of our own projects, but in terms of dollars in the door, that fee-for-service work is the number one revenue driver for the organization. So right now what that looks like is, we're doing this big national monument project. We're funding that $2.7 million project. Then next door at San Vicente, we're going tomorrow, is we're hired to do that project. So, you know, multi-million-dollar project over a number of years. So there's those big public works type projects that we're going after, like that Saratoga Trail. So we're going out to bid competitively, and then we're doing private work as well. So just this last week, we started building trails on a private ranch for the founder of Intuit TurboTax. You know, he's got a huge tract of land here. We're building trails for him. So it's something that we kind of have got into reluctantly. You know, we want to prioritize that public benefit work whenever we can, but you know, it's the income for that, the project development cycle is, you know, it's uncertain, it's intermittent. So we want to be able to keep our professional crews employed, right? We want to keep that continuity, have people employed year round, and not just on a project by project, you know, a broken up basis. So we have added in more of this work. So we're doing trail design, construction, and you know, building pump tracks for people. And we've expanded our geography. So our core geography was historically Santa Cruz County. Now we're looking at San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Santa Cruz County. So 3-county area where we bring our full suite of services to, right? Volunteer advocacy, volunteer work. We're developing and funding projects. But if we're going to get hired, we'll go farther afield. We've built trail as far south as Ventura, design trail in San Diego County. So we're doing these other fee-for-service type services on a farther afield that also kind of keep people employed as well. So that's been our approach. It's worked well. So you know, we're sometimes saying no to things. If we're fully committed on those public benefit projects, we're either pushing people off or saying, hey, we can't help you out right now. I'm pointing them to someone else to help with that work. So it has been a major factor of allowing us to scale. You know, all that work's got overhead and profit margin built into it. So we're funding our self-funded work and our overhead, you know, our staff through this as well. So it's been, you know, very, very powerful that way. It's, you know, right up there with our major donor contributions in terms of driving the organization.
Did you have to form a separate entity?
No. So the nonprofit holds the contractor's license. Yeah, which is, you know, definitely a unique situation. Yeah.
You haven't got any pushback on that from the government as a conflict of interest?
A little bit. We have from a few people who are from my core partners. They really they find a lot of value in this setup because they know that, you know, we're invested. We're building trails that we're likely going to be maintaining. So they know that we're, you know, have a different approach than your normal contractor. People who don't know us so well are a little leery at first. You know, in terms of being an advocacy organization of a contractor, there's been some questions raised there. We figured out how to keep that pretty clean though, so it's worked for us so far.
It does create some opportunities, whereas it's easier to contract or bring this nonprofit in than it is other contractors, partly because of the relationship building, and sometimes in the bid process, well, as Matt knows, in the bid process, if you're a nonprofit, you might not have to go out to bid, you can single source. So there's some interesting components there that a nonprofit organization has, some interesting opportunities, some good opportunities over a rigging contract.
You can subcontract.
And you can subcontract.
Yeah, when you go out to bid, you know, like if I was a contractor just trying to straight up bid the job, you guys come in, and also like how do you deal with volunteers and like the competition level?
Yeah.
Like even playing field for
right. It's like a project by project thing, like whether volunteers can be used. We've done a lot of research on it, and it's legitimate to use volunteers on a public bid project. You do it certain ways and do it through the land manager. So yeah, but some projects we can't have volunteers on. It's like just the way the contract's written. You know, it would be an unfair advantage.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a hybrid unit, like where it fits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Totally.
Is that fee for service work? Is that all new trail construction?
We've done maintenance and planning, design, and yeah. So we're on a team right now for a land manager over the hill that's doing a trail plan for a new park. So we're helping with that.
Just a two-part question. What do you charge for membership? And then can you give some examples of 5, 6, and 7?
Yeah, totally. And maybe we'll close off there.
Yeah, and we are going to talk more about fundraising later today too, so there'll be time for more discussion around that with Nancy. Who will be here.
I wanted to touch, just before we get off this subject, workers' comp for volunteers and for your employees and that kind of thing. Is that something that happens with something?
Yeah, I mean we're insured out the yin yang for everything. Yeah, so
you get workers' comp for your volunteers on?
No,
Insurance.
we have a different policy for, it's not workers' comp, but it's a policy that covers volunteers in case of an accident. Yeah, I can look up the specifics too if you want to follow up. Okay. Yeah. Membership. We have a sliding scale. You can do it for as little as $5 a month. We made the change to a monthly recurring, like automated membership, which has been huge for us. We used to be an annual thing, so just the ARR with the monthly has been really powerful, and getting people to sign up for auto renew is really good for retention. So I should know the breakdown. I think their average member is like $20 a month. People can go up to 500 or anywhere above that as well.
And monthly is the only option?
It is now. Yeah, it is now.
And what do they get in exchange of their membership?
Yeah, that's something that I was going to talk about as a challenge too, like providing value. So really like investing in the organization and trails, and having the little higher touch communications where members get a little more information directly. In the past, we've done a lot of membership events. Our events have kind of fallen off a little bit since COVID. So we're looking to create some more member specific events or give them priority for coming out for other things too.
Sure.
Yeah, and they get some swag a little bit. Yeah.
In California, you
What's
should ask him that question.
What's that?
No pay-to-play trails here.
No, that's something we're working on, but not yet. Yep. Corporate sponsorship. Just getting support from like a Google or a Salesforce or the big corporations. Something that we've been working on a little bit. We've got great support with the bike industry, Santa Cruz Bikes and whatnot, but when you get outside of that, it kind of falls off pretty quickly. So figuring out how to bring those dollars in is a big opportunity we see. Online campaigns like bike giveaways. We just closed one out last week. So those are great tools.
So that's like a donate and you'll have a chance to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Great. Well, thanks everyone. Great conversation. We didn't get all the way through it.